Hello and welcome to tonight's webinar on student debt relief for educators now. My name is Eric Harrington. I'm a senior counsel in the Office of General Counsel at NEA. I'm going to start with just some technical issues and notes on accessibility. For the hard of hearing or deaf, closed captioning is available by clicking on the closed caption icon below. Please use the chat function to tell us about any issues with the closed captioning, or to alert us about any kind of technical problems. If we can't hear us, if you can't see something, use the chat function for that. If you have substantive questions about anything that we're discussing tonight or about student debt issues generally, you can ask those questions using the Q&A function. And many of those will be answered tonight by experts who are online right now, who can answer these questions as the webinar proceeds. And we'll also group some of them and answer them live during the webinar as well. The raise hand function, it won't really be turned off. I think it's here, maybe it's not, but we're not gonna pay attention to it. So if you wanna communicate with the panelists, use the chat function for technical issues and use Q&A for substantive questions. And if we have other participants join us and you're in the chat or the Q&A and you see people asking technical questions in the Q&A or substantive questions in the chat, go ahead and let them know too live where they should be directing their questions. And with that, I'd like to introduce and welcome Eric Brown, who is a biology teacher from Evanston, Illinois, and has been a member of NEA's executive committee and one of the true champions and leaders of NEA, to welcome us and kick us off tonight. And with that, I turn it over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, I am Eric Brown. I'm a high school biology teacher from Evanston, Illinois, and I serve all of you on the NEA Executive Committee. Now, when it comes to student loans, I think I had it relatively easy. My undergraduate degree was practically debt-free because of university grants. However, my master's left me with about $40,000 in debt. And when it came time to pay off those student loans, like many of you, I was frightened. I knew I could pay them off, but I knew that it was going to take me quite a long time to do it, and it would prevent me from putting aside the money that I would need to invest to be a homeowner and also to start investing in my retirement. Now, when looking at options for reducing my student loans because of the type of school that I work in, it just seems so cumbersome and confusing that I just wish I had the opportunities all of you have today. I wish I had the opportunity to know more. And guess what? Today, you will know more. The flow for today, that's our agenda. It's gonna help you understand the student loan provisions of the CARES Act. It'll help you understand what options are currently available to you for relief. You'll be able to discuss an awesome tool that is provided as a NEA member benefit that will assist you in navigating your loans. And finally, you will know what actions you need to take now to ensure that when you are on the NEA Executive Committee 15 to 20 years from now, or maybe even sooner, those aspiring and early career educators that are listening to you will have no debt whatsoever when entering professions as noble and important as ours. We need our students to have experienced, high-quality educators. And student debt is a threat to our profession because it prevents many folks from even considering it as an alternative to work. Because I think of it as more than work. It's a life passion. So for those folks who look like me, though, we're even rarer because of the high student debt burden. A career in public education is unaffordable if you want to raise a family, if you want to buy a home, or in many cases, if you just want to survive. But guess what? Fortunately, today and throughout your career, NEA is here to help. That's right. We have a wonderful team today, and they're going to share their knowledge and expertise. They're going to raise your awareness of repayment options and forgiveness programs, and they're going to help you navigate those programs and fight for the systemic change that we need so that student debt doesn't deprive our schools from having great and diverse educators. So Ronnie, Eric, Lindsay, Christina, and Evan, they're all here for you. Ronnie, take it away, please. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric. Hi, everybody. My name is Ronnie Lau. I am a federal lobbyist in NEA's government relations shop, and I handle all our higher education issues. So we're just going to kick off today's webinar by talking about the CARES Act, which some of you guys may be familiar with. So the CARES Act was signed by the president earlier in March, which was a $2 trillion coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security package. It was intended to stabilize workers, families, and the economy during the COVID-19 public health crisis. This was the third relief package that passed out of Congress during this pandemic and contains many beneficial provisions utilized to relieve some of the burden that is occurring for 45 million different Americans in student loan debt. Obviously, it's a very large bill. For the moments of this webinar, we'll be just talking about just the student loan provisions, but obviously it has tons of more things that are within the bill. So just about the student loan relief, the primary item that we want to bring your attention to is that it suspends payments and waives all interest for certain types of federal student loans, starting from March 13th, 2020 to September 30th, 2020. It took effect on April 10th, 2020, but it was retroactive to that March 13th date that I just mentioned. So it suspends federal direct loans that are directly held by the federal government. So we say that because there are some federal loan programs that some of you guys might have that the loans aren't actually held by the institution. We call those as commercially held loans or Perkins loans that are held by the institution that you attended to or the university. Some of these federal student loans that qualify for the suspension are federal family education loans, FFEL loans for short, federal direct loans, and federal Perkins loans. But like I mentioned, some of those FFEL loans and Perkins loans may be held outside of the U.S. Department of Education. And with that, those actually don't qualify for that reason. But if your loans are being held by the federal government, your loans have been suspended for payment and interest for this time frame. And the final thing about these suspended payments is also that they consider credit towards public service loan forgiveness. So in these 6 months, you'll be receiving 6 months of credit for public service loan forgiveness, whether you're paying or not. In addition to that, there's some different credit protections for student loan borrowers in the CARES Act. It suspends involuntary collections for certain types of federal loans, such as wage garnishment and federal income tax on Social Security withholdings. It also treats suspended payments as on time for credit reports as they pull them. And the U.S. Department of Education must also provide numerous notices before payments can resume during this time frame. So this is anticipated to happen in August this year. Sorry about that. My dog is barking at something. I apologize for that. But they must provide numerous notices about when payments will resume prior to that. So at that point, it will happen either through email, through telephone, or through snail mail. And in that time frame, they will also notify about the different income-driven repayment plans that you could be enrolling in once payments resume, which will be very useful in terms of getting yourself on track for public service loan forgiveness. In addition, some of you guys may have taken Teach Grants out when you were becoming an educator. For those who are unfamiliar with Teach Grants, the Teach Grant program provides up to $40,000 a year in grant assistance to a student, so those who are studying to become an educator. And at that commitment of those grants, they must serve at least 4 years as a full-time teacher in a high-need field in a public or private elementary or secondary school that serves low-income students. So if they don't fulfill that teaching obligation of the 4 years, their Teach Grant could be converted from a grant into a loan. So obviously in this time frame with COVID-19, a lot of school districts obviously had to close early or shut down for the remainder of their school year, leaving a partial year. And with that said, there's an exception made for Teach Grant holders that if their school year was interrupted by COVID-19, the partial year is still credited towards the full year for your Teach Grant purposes, so that you wouldn't be wrongly converted into a loan. Then there's also teacher loan forgiveness, and Eric will be touching base on that in addition to public service loan forgiveness later on. But specifically to the CARES Act, teacher loan forgiveness is available to educators that have either direct or staff loans, are highly qualified or fully state certified, and teach at a school that serves low-income students for consecutive of 5 years after the loans were taken out. And so the CARES Act, like with Teach Grants, also ensures that if the service year was cut short because of COVID-19, it would count towards teacher loan forgiveness. Now, teacher loan forgiveness has been around for a while, but this is just a provision that was done like the Teach Grants to making sure that folks qualify continuing because of the extenuating circumstances that people are facing through right now. And then finally, the CARES Act has a provision where employers can pay for an employee's student loans by a tax-free basis. So an employer can provide student loan repayment benefits up to $5,250 annually, and the employee will not pay an income tax on that dollar amount. This also applies to any student loan payments made by the employer from now until January 1st, 2021. So it is a temporary benefit. And Eric will talk about that with the collective bargaining issues that you might be able to raise up with this benefit. And with that, I'll turn it back to Eric to talk about what you guys can be doing in this time frame.
So thank you, Ronnie, and thank you for your work on this issue and fighting so hard on Capitol Hill on behalf of our members to make sure that student debt relief is part of any of the current or future relief packages or future stimulus bills. And as Eric spoke to, we know that student debt has just been burdening too many of us for far too long. And when we've been kind of hit with two crises in 2009, 2010, and then just a decade later, these kind of bookends have put many of us in very difficult situations. And so what I want to talk about is what can we be doing? And this is why we really want to do this webinar now in June tonight, is what can we be doing and what can you be doing during this suspension where we have a little bit of breathing room before payments snap back in September. And I know, as Ronnie said, the loan payments are suspended for a certain category of loans. So not all of our loans have been suspended, but some of them have. And so what can we do to make use of this valuable time? Okay, so the very first thing that we can do is first to make sure we actually are getting all of the benefits of the CARES Act. Your federal loan payments on all your direct loans should have stopped by April 10th, and the suspended payment should be retroactive to March 13th. All of your wage garnishment should have stopped. Some of you may have had your wages garnished to pay student loans. Those should have stopped. If they have not, and we know they have not stopped for everybody. In fact, there's a current lawsuit suing Betsy DeVos to try to make sure that those get stopped and that she follows the law and carries that out. If your wage garnishments have not stopped, you should speak to your employer as soon as possible and get those to stop. You should make sure that the interest, that you're not accruing any interest. So you should check your statements and make sure that there's no interest that's being accrued during the suspension period. You also might want to make sure that your suspended payments count toward PSLF. That's what the CARES Act provides. They should be counting toward public service loan forgiveness. Many of you, if you log into your servicer, will even have like a running tally on your count of qualifying payments. And we're going to talk a fair amount about public service loan forgiveness tonight. But you should see each month of suspended payments be credited as a qualifying payment toward public service loan forgiveness. Now, there's the whole category of loans that have not been suspended and that we have not had any relief for, at least nationwide. And those are loans that you may have that are private loans that are not federally funded and federally held loans. So any of your personal private student loans, or if you've converted any federal loans to private loans, those have not been suspended, at least nationwide. A handful of states have negotiated temporary suspensions. You may live in one of those. For those circumstances, you should be sure to contact your private lender to make sure that you're exploring any relief options you would need with respect to your private loans. And then the last thing of the big CARES Act benefits that you should consider taking advantage of, and this is particularly true for if you're a local union leader or if you're a member of a bargaining committee and you're in collective bargaining or going to be soon, is you should consider bargaining to get that $5,250 tax-free compensation for student debt payments that's in the CARES Act. And I want to be super clear about what that is. It is not federal money that's given to school districts to give you $5,250. Instead, what it is a provision in the tax code that allows you to receive a certain amount of compensation tax-free. So assume you make $30,000, $35,000, $50,000, let's just say $50,000. Assume you make $50,000. Under the CARES Act, you could have $5,250 of your compensation be compensation for student debt payments, and that portion of your compensation would be tax-free. So it would, depending on your tax rate, it could be $1,000 or $1,500 benefit. So that's something that is worth exploring, even if you don't use it for additional compensation, of just figuring out how to structure your compensation so you're taking advantage of that. Again, that's really for the local leaders and bargaining team members to think about how to work with that. The other big thing, and this is one of the really big reasons why we wanted to have this discussion tonight, is this is a great time to consider your repayment options. And this goes for your federal loans. So let me start by just giving a little bit of background on the types of loans, the types of repayment plans. I'm going to talk mostly about the income-driven repayment plans, but let's just tick through these. The first is the standard repayment plan, and this is the kind of payment plan that has you pay off your loans within 10 years. So your monthly payments are whatever is required to pay off the loan in total over the course of 120 payments or 10 years. Extended repayment plans go longer. They can go 20, 25 years. And they can be attractive because they'll lower your monthly payment, but you pay for longer and you ultimately end up paying more because of interest accrual. Graduated repayment plan is sort of an escalating payment system. When you first start paying the loans, you have a lower payment. As time progresses, your monthly payments increase. They too can be attractive, right, because of their at least initially low monthly payment, but often they take longer to pay off the loans, and the payments escalate regardless of what your underlying personal financial situation is like. Okay, those are the kind of the background ones, but what we want to really focus in tonight is on the income-driven repayment plans. And those payment plans are your monthly payment is based on your discretionary income. Now there's 4 different types, and we don't need to get into the details of these various types, but I just want you to be aware of these. So sometimes you'll see them be called different things, because income contingent, income based, this pay or repay. Those are just versions of income-driven repayment plans, and they have slightly different calculations. Okay, so calculating your income-driven repayment. So as I said, your monthly payments would be determined by your discretionary income rather than your loan balance. And as a general rule, on income-driven repayment plans, you would pay around 10 to 15% of your discretionary income, which is defined as your gross income, adjusted gross income. And there are various factors that will adjust your gross income, minus the federal poverty line. The less you make, the less you pay. And your payments can go, and they do for many people, can go as low as $0 per month, and they're considered payments. There's one tool that's on the Department of Education's website, and Eric's already mentioned this. We think we have a better tool that is able to help you navigate your loans that we're going to talk about later. But you can also do this yourself, and you can go to the studentaid.gov loan simulator, and you can punch in your numbers and get a good idea as to what kind of repayment plan you should be in. And I want to emphasize some of the advantages of the income-driven repayment plans that are really relevant right now. So the first is that if you're an income-driven repayment plan, your loans are forgiven no matter what after a certain amount of time on them, 20 or 25 years. But they're forgiven after 10 years under the public service loan forgiveness if you meet all of the requirements of that forgiveness program. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But most important for educators, the income-driven repayment plan is the only repayment plan that's eligible for public service loan forgiveness. So if you want to be in the game to get public service loan forgiveness, you have to be an income-driven repayment plan. You at least have to get there. There's a little bit of a caveat to this, but you have to get there and you have to be in an income-driven repayment plan. Technically you can be in a standard repayment plan, but you would be paying off your loan after 10 years anyway. So public service loan forgiveness doesn't factor in. So if you want public service loan forgiveness, you really need to look at an income-driven repayment plan. And as I mentioned, the monthly payments can go down, and they can go down when you're facing a financial hardship. So if a spouse is losing a job, if your hours are cut, if your underlying family income situation changes, and particularly if it gets worse, you can get your income-driven repayment plan payment lowered. So if your income changes, your income-driven repayment plan also should lower, and it's based on can be based on your income for the next 12 months and not just your income for the last 12 months. Okay, and you can apply for an income-driven repayment plan on the studentaid.gov website. I've sort of taken a screenshot here, and you can navigate to manage my loans, and you can apply. You can print it out and fill it out by hand, or you can try to use their tool. Some of it will require, and this is particularly true if you're trying to get your income-driven repayment plan tied to your future income or your current income. You might have to print things out, and it can be a little complicated. And then again, we're also going to talk about this in detail tonight. You can use the NEA Member Benefits Student Debt Navigator powered by Savvy to manage all of this. And a huge thing that it can handle is income-driven repayment plans. Now, a very important reason why to think hard about this now, and if you're going to get into income-driven repayment, to do it now before there's a snapback in payments in September, is because come September, assuming there's a snapback, and you decide, oh, I don't want to be paying, or I can't really afford the payments that I'm currently committed to making, the servicers are going to be kind of overwhelmed. So if you want to get into an income-driven repayment plan by September, October, whatever, it really is a good idea to do it now, because it does take a little bit of time. And instead, if you call your servicer come September, they're just going to take the easy road out. They're going to try to push you into forbearance or something like that. That doesn't get you credit for public service loan forgiveness, that just has interest accrue, and in a whole bunch of ways, and we know this from our own experience, I'm sure this has been your experience, the servicers aren't always there representing your best interest and are too often looking at easy way outs or even just confused about what is the best thing to do. So if you're thinking about an income-driven repayment plan, like now's the time to do it. Okay, another thing that you can be doing during this suspension period is make sure, if you're someone who's looking at public service loan forgiveness, take the time now and make sure that you're on track for public service loan forgiveness. And if you're someone who should be eligible for forgiveness, who have completed all the steps, don't wait. Get the loans forgiven as fast as you can, because if anything changes in your underlying employment, that could affect your eligibility for forgiveness. So let me just walk through the 5 steps to public service loan forgiveness. And it's in each of these sort of technical steps that far too many people have been tripped up. It has not been designed well to promote forgiveness. It has not been managed well to promote forgiveness. There's been a lot of confusion and misleading information that's been given to borrowers. So we want to be really clear with everyone about what you have to do to set yourself up for public service loan forgiveness. So the first thing is that you have to have the right kind of loan. Your loan must be a direct loan to qualify for forgiveness. That means it must be a loan directly from the federal government. Now, you may write your checks or may have your payments through a servicer, but it's the federal government that holds the loan. So you may have Navient or Great Lakes or Fed Loan, but you need a direct loan. And we're not going to talk that much about consolidation, although Savvy can certainly help you with consolidation issues. That's another issue that's worth exploring if you're early, especially if you're early in your career, to try to get yourself in direct loan if you're not already. Anyone in the last several years should be in a direct loan because all of it has moved to direct loans for quite some time. Okay, so you have to have the right kind of loan. You have to have a direct loan. You have to have the right servicer. Your loan has to be serviced by Fed Loan when you request forgiveness. It's okay if you're not in Fed Loan right now, but you'll have to get to Fed Loan as your servicer when you request for forgiveness. You'll be pushed over to Fed Loan once you start the process by filing an employment certification form, certifying that you work for the right type of employer. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So you have to have the right kind of loan. You have to be in the right servicer. And as I mentioned already, you have to be in the right kind of repayment plan. So you have to be in an income-driven repayment plan, at the very least, when you're applying for forgiveness. Next, you have to work full-time, and I saw this earlier and I should have answered. The full-time is 30 hours a week. So if you have to work full-time for the right kind of employer. And what matters is the nature of your employer, not your job. So if you're a cafeteria worker, if you're a bus driver, but you work for a public school, you work for the right kind of employer to get public service loan forgiveness. For the vast majority of our members, college instructors, public school educators, ESPs, you're going to be covered. You work for the right kind of employer. So you have to work for the right kind of employer, but you also have to prove that you work for the right kind of employer by filling out a public service employment certification form. And you should do that every year. If you haven't done it for a few years, that's okay. You can clean it up and get one filed that'll cover 5 years. But just as a matter of course, you should file it every year. And then you have to make 120 on-time payments. They don't have to be consecutive. You can have 20 payments and then go in forbearance, have 50 payments, then be late twice. It only has to add up to 120. So it can take more than 10 years that way, but it only has to add up to 120 on-time payments. Now, if you've done all of this, and some of you have, and you're still not getting your loans forgiven, because a lot of people will apply and still kind of get a runaround, we want to hear from you. And so we want you to email memberrapidresponse@nea.org. If you've made 120 payments, if you have the right kind of loan, if you're in the right servicer, if you have the right repayment plan, and if you work full-time for the right kind of employer, and you've done the certification forms, you should email us, and we will work with you to help you get you across the finish line to get your loans forgiven. And when you email, go ahead and write in the subject line, PSLF 120 payments, and we'll be able to pull that one out pretty easily. Okay, there's a little bit of caveat to the stuff that I said about public service loan forgiveness, and that is Congress passed a few years ago a temporary expanded public service loan forgiveness program. And what the temporary expanded program does is it allows people who have not been in income-driven repayment plans the whole time to still be eligible for forgiveness. So you can have been in a graduate repayment plan for a time and then converted to an income-driven repayment plan and meet all the other qualifications and get your loans forgiven. And it's a temporary program, but we highly encourage people to take advantage of that. And so the offer goes to that group as well. If you've met all the other requirements, but you've been in a couple different repayment plans, but you still have 120 payments, you should also contact us and we'll help you get across the finish line. And also Savvy can help, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. Okay, the other big program that you want to be looking at during this suspension period, and this goes for educators generally, is the teacher loan forgiveness program. And the way you should think about this is public service loan forgiveness is like a big circle. Almost every NEA member is theoretically eligible. If you work full time, if you're less than 30 hours, that would be the group, but you work for the right type of employer, and then you just have to meet the other qualifications: the full time, the number of payments, the right loan, the right servicer, and the right repayment plan. Teacher loan forgiveness is a bit of a misnomer. It's not really teacher loan forgiveness. It's low income school teacher loan forgiveness. It's loan forgiveness that's available to educators who teach, and really just teachers who teach at a school that serves low-income students. You also have to be highly qualified or state certified. The teacher loan forgiveness is more expansive, though. It doesn't apply just to direct loans. It also applies to FFEL loans, whereas the public service loan forgiveness applies only to direct loans. So if you're thinking of them as like a couple of circles, public service loan forgiveness is a much bigger circle. Teacher loan forgiveness is a smaller one. And so for the vast majority of our members, PSLF is going to be where you want to think. But for a subset of folks, teacher loan forgiveness, or like I said, low-income teacher loan forgiveness is something that you should explore. Now, teacher loan forgiveness, you can get up to $17,500 in forgiveness if you teach secondary math or science, again, at a low-income school, or you teach special education at elementary or secondary level, if your primary responsibility is teaching students with disabilities. Now, teacher loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness can be used consecutively, but not at the same time. So you can have 5 years of teaching and get up to $17,500 forgiven under teacher loan forgiveness, and then restart the clock for your 120 payments on public service loan forgiveness. So you can stagger them. You can't count the time for both. So your years of paying under teacher loan forgiveness can't count toward public service loan forgiveness. As a general rule of thumb, if you have a smaller debt load and you work at a low-income school, teacher loan forgiveness is probably where you should be thinking. because it can wipe out a large percentage of your debt. And the bigger your student debt is, then public service loan forgiveness makes more sense because it's not capped. It doesn't. You can have more than 5,000 or 7,500 forgiven under the public service loan forgiveness program. Okay, obviously, all of this is very complicated and can be very difficult to navigate. And what we want to be clear with all of you is that this is the system. It's not you. This stuff is structural. The way we have funded our higher education system, the way that we have loaded people up with debt, the way that we've created payment plans that don't get you out of debt, the way we've created these forgiveness programs that are confusing and complicated and really technical. These are all barriers that have created structural burdens on us that aren't your fault. And so at NEA, we've worked with a partner who we've been very excited to work with the last year called Savvy. And they have provided a benefit for members to help you navigate your student debt personally. And we're very excited to announce today for the first time, that thanks to the NEA members Life Insurance Trust, the NEA members Insurance Trust, the first year, 1 year, and we don't know about other years, but 1 year is going to be available complimentary to all NEA members. And so with that, I'm going to introduce you to Lindsay Clark from Savvy, who can walk you through how this tool can help you navigate the student debt in your particular situation. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Lindsay.
Eric, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, start over.
Okay, all right. Apologies about that. So yes, it's great to be with everyone this evening. We are really excited, particularly because of this announcement and our ability to now offer all of you, all NEA members, this first year of essential service for free. And I'm sort of gonna walk through what that really means and sort of an overview of the platform itself and the value that we hope it can bring to your student loan experience in general. So if we go on to the next screen, obviously Eric and Ronnie have sort of walked you through all of the stipulations and eligibility requirements around all of these programs. And if at this point you're feeling slightly overwhelmed, that's natural. And, you know, as Eric said, that's, you know, this is to no fault of your own. All of these stipulations are, you know, the nature of these programs. And so the way to best tackle that, we felt, was by developing a technology platform that could help borrowers to identify their best repayment and forgiveness options, and then to provide sort of a service on top of that that would really act as sort of an advocate for the borrower and make sure that from, you know, start to finish, you know, we ensured that the borrower got to where they were trying to go. And so the NEA Student Debt Navigator, first and foremost, is going to help you check your eligibility and qualifications for programs like PSLF and TLF, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness and Teacher Loan Forgiveness. And this is obviously very, very important, as we've sort of been talking to earlier in the presentation, because the earlier you can identify if there are any issues in your eligibility, anything that's going to throw a wrench in your forgiveness plans, the earlier we can identify that and take corrective action, the better you're off you're going to be. We don't want to see anyone, you know, foregoing a year's worth of payments and working to find out, you know, that they had, on a technicality, are no longer going to be eligible for that forgiveness. So we check these qualifications. You know, if we notice that there's something wrong with any aspect of your loan situation, your application, we're able to take that corrective action and get you on the right course, you know, as soon as possible. When going through the tool itself, you're able to see personalized repayment and forgiveness options. And this is really important because, you know, I'm a student loan borrower myself. I've gone through many calculators and simulations online where most of the time it's based off of, you know, aggregate numbers or, you know, national averages. These programs and the options that we're identifying for every borrower are personalized to that individual borrower. And I can't emphasize enough how important this is as far as not only helping you to identify potential savings, but also as a safeguard when dealing with servicers. Many times borrowers submit applications to a servicer and the servicer comes back and tells them, okay, you're eligible for, you know, a $500 payment. Do you have any way of knowing, you know, if that's the correct amount? No, and that's not on, you know, on you to know that, but we see all the time servicers making mistakes. And so we're able to sort of identify for that borrower what we believe they should be eligible for and help them to achieve it. Not only do we identify those potential options that the borrower could take, we then show them how to go about doing that and actually get them enrolled in those programs. And this is really, I think, the difference between, just reading something online and having a resource and having a full tool that can actually help you to take an action and change your student loan situation for the better. So we submit all of the paperwork for you digitally, and this makes the whole process so much easier for many borrowers. There's no printing out forms, chasing down HR, trying to track this down. Borrowers who have achieved forgiveness have described the process as a full-time job, and that shouldn't be the case. Let it be our full-time jobs. You all have full-time jobs, and so this is one aspect of that. We also, aside from just submitting those applications, monitor them until basically they achieve their desired outcome, okay? So we're not just going to submit that and say, see you later, you're on your own. When we submit that application, we do so with the intention of making sure that the servicer reviews it in proper time, and if they don't, we take corrective action, with the borrower to make sure that they get what they need. So this is sort of, again, where Savvy comes in as an advocate for borrowers, in addition to just the technology and the platform that you have access to. This also includes things like your yearly recertification, which is going to involve your repayment plans and forgiveness. All of these programs require some type of yearly certification around the paperwork and application process. And so, ultimately our hope is that borrowers can become more informed and better educated to do this on their own. But we also know just how tedious it can be and how easy it can be to miss those deadlines. So again, we're monitoring all of that for you. You really can sort of take your mind off of it and rest assured that Savvy is looking out and knows exactly what the next steps are going to be. Speaking of monitoring, we also work very closely with a lot of advocacy organizations and policy groups, and are sort of the first to hear what's coming down the pipeline as far as new legislation and policy changes. When the CARES Act came out, we were able to incorporate those benefits into our tool right away, and then work to sort of help inform borrowers of their eligibility. And we will continue to do so. This is something that's very important to us and our tool. So you can rest assured that the most accurate information is reflected in the tool that you see. And last but not least, and I think this might be one of the most compelling aspects of the Student Debt Navigator, is the ability to access one-on-one support with our student loan experts. I often say, if you are relying on your servicer or that agent at your servicer to give you advice about decisions you need to make regarding your forgiveness plan and things like that, it makes me very nervous. I've been on the phone with borrowers where they are just told outright incorrect information, and not necessarily to the fault of the agent, but they just aren't informed. Okay, and so and this potentially has disastrous effects on that borrower's attempt at forgiveness, and that's what we want to make sure it doesn't happen. So you're able to access, under this premium service, one-on-one support with our experts at any point in time, however much you want to use us or talk to us throughout the course of that year. And so this is, again, part of this essential service that I hope will really make the difference for borrowers and get them, that extra step into those programs. So that being said, I'm now going to walk you through the tool itself. You can find it at neamb.com/getnavnea. And hopefully we can put that link in the chat box, and I'll give you all a second to access that. But that again is neamb.com/getnavnea. And that's going to bring you to the NEA member benefits site, where you can sign in and check your eligibility through the Debt Navigator. So that's how you would access this tool initially. I'll give it one more second. So again, neamb.com/getnavnea. And once you've been able to go through and sign into your NEA member benefits account, you'll be brought over to the Savvy sort of homepage, I should say. And don't worry if you're still trying to log into NEAMB. Don't worry. Again, we have our support team standing by. You can do this later on after the presentation, and we'll be able to answer any of those questions. So don't worry that you're going to miss out on something. You can do this tool on your own. It should be pretty intuitive. But we start out by asking two basic questions that we hope everyone would know the answer to off the top of their head without sort of having to do any extra digging. And that is your expected income for 2020 and your current federal student loan payment. So in the example I show here on the next slide, this borrower's expected income for 2020 is $40,000, and their current monthly payment is $377. I should say. Now, if you are currently taking advantage of a $0 suspended payment under the CARES Act, I would recommend putting in what your monthly payment was before the CARES Act went into effect. That we were able to tell and compare it to what your normal payment would be under normal circumstances. So that being said, based on just those two estimates alone, we're able to run a quick algorithmic assessment and determine that you could lower that payment down to about $177 a month, which is a savings of around $200. And that's just looking at an income-driven repayment plan. We've looked at that person's income, as far as being able to determine what they would be eligible to reduce that payment by. So if you click Let's Get Started, you're going to enter into the tool. And it's going to have sort of the look and feel of like a TurboTax for your student loans. And that's exactly how we like to describe it. We're going to ask you questions around your tax filing status, your income, your employment. All of this is to help us better identify your optimal repayment and forgiveness plan. The number in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen where the orange arrow is, that $121 a month, that is the estimated monthly payment, and it's going to update in real time based on the information that you're entering into the tool. So if you remember on the previous screen, we estimated that the borrower would be eligible to lower their payment to $177 a month. But here we've already updated that again to $121 a month. And that's because the borrower has indicated that they have a child dependent in the questions over onto the right. When you have a child dependent that is able to lower that monthly payment on an IDR about $50 for every child dependent, all right? So depending upon the information, again, you're entering into that tool, it's going to be reflected in those results. We also use smart skip logic. So that means depending upon the answers that you choose, the flow might look slightly different for each borrower. So for example, if this borrower, instead of being single, was married and filing jointly, we would need to ask questions about their spouse because the spouse's signature is required on the IDR form we're ultimately going to submit. So again, it could look slightly different, but that's just the customization of the tool to your needs. Moving on to the next screen, we ask about your employment. And this is really where our work with the NEA and NEA member benefits and teachers in general is very apparent in the tool. We basically ask questions around your employment. We have a database of all of the school districts and all of the schools in the country. So when you start typing in your school, it should pop up in a drop-down menu right away. But we ask even further than that, the questions necessary to determine eligibility around things like teacher loan forgiveness. So on the next screen, you'll see, this is sort of if you were scrolling down that page, we ask questions like if you're a highly qualified teacher, how long you've been teaching there, if it's Title I, et cetera, what you might have taught, special education, math or science. Again, as Eric sort of explained these programs, that's to help identify, based on your qualifications, what you would be eligible for under teacher loan forgiveness. So we incorporate all of that into the tool. If you weren't a teacher and you didn't, enter in a school district or a school, then those questions wouldn't appear. So again, it's all specified to the type of employment you're entering in, the information you're giving us. Moving on to the next screen, at this point, you'd be prompted to register for a Savvy account. And this is just first, last name, email address, and a password. This is because the next sort of phase is going to be the loan sync portion. And that's where we're going to be syncing over your secure loan data into the tool to really optimize and sort of specialize that potential repayment plan based on your loan data. So it should be a quick and easy thing just to register, and you can continue on into the loan sync portion, which I really personally think is one of the neatest aspects technology-wise. Most borrowers have on average 5 to 6 different loans. I personally have 13 different loans, different disbursement dates, different interest rates. My balance, I accumulate $32 in interest a day on my loan. So my balance from last week to this week is going to change. If you remember all of that off the top of your head, kudos to you. But if you don't, that's okay. You can choose and select your servicer. So in this case, Navient, and then enter in your username and password. And we'll be able to pull over all of that student loan data into our tool in about a few seconds. Now, we think federal loans, if you have, several different servicers, some people have Great Lakes and Navient, et cetera, you can enter in as many different servicers as you need to. This is a look at what that sync looks like when the data pulls over. Perfect, thanks. All right, so this is the information that we're pulling over from your loan servicer. Now, I want to say that the programs, specifically the repayment and forgiveness programs that we've discussed here today, are only eligible for federal loans. So private loans are not eligible. However, if you do have private loans, that's an important part of your student loan picture. So we encourage you to sync those private loans into the tool, and you can do so just like you did the federal loans by identifying your servicer, commercial lender, entering in your credentials, and it'll pull over that data. And it'll flag on our end for our team that you have private loans, and they'll be able to follow up and work with you to address those appropriately, whether looking into refinancing or other options available. So I just wanted to make note of that because people do have private loans as well. Now, after you sync those loans, you're on to the results page. And this is essentially sort of the final screen, or most important screen really, where we get to show you what we've identified as your optimal repayment and forgiveness plan. So in this case, we've identified that the borrower would be best served by enrolling on the PAYE plan, P-A-Y-E, pay as you earn, and it would lower their monthly payment down to $121 a month, so a savings of about $250, and we project that they would be eligible for about $69,000 in forgiveness. If you'll notice, sort of scrolling down, there are drop-down menus that sort of explain each of those different, sort of subsets of information, what the PSLF program is, what an IDR plan is, et cetera, so that someone who maybe didn't get to attend tonight's webinar could still go through this tool and understand what they were seeing on that results page. Now, if at this point the borrower says, okay, that sounds good to me, I'm ready, I want to enroll, they would be prompted to either choose our DIY plan or our essential. And what's great news for everyone here tonight is that we are now announcing that essential plan, which was previously $29.95, which is a reduction from $89, which is the retail price of the tool. So it's huge savings. But we are essentially providing all NEA members with that essential service free for their first year. So if you want to enlist our help and basically have us take over the application and monitoring of your loans to sort of use our premium support and our assistance in advocating for you in any way that you need to, that is part of the essential plan. However, I just want to point out that the DIY version, which we essentially had for borrowers who wanted to do it themselves, is still a great option and something that people can pursue. I just want to say, these are free federal programs. We are completely transparent about that. And so this is why we had that option for borrowers. And we even provided links for them to the Department of Education website where those applications existed. So again, we are on your side as an advocate. We're not trying to trick you or anything like that. But what we're really excited about is being able to offer our full suite of services to everyone for free. So, and that is under the essential plan. So if you click sign up for that, you will be perfect. So just a quick glimpse at what this digital enrollment actually looks like. So the IDR application is a 5 to 6 page application. We have it completely pre-filled, based on your information. We only asked you for your social security number to enter that in, and then you're able to digitally sign, submit, and it comes right over to our end. We review manually, make sure all of the numbers line up, everything looks good, supporting documentation is correct, and then we submit to your servicer. And we pretty much have this down to a science as to how accurate and efficient we are in doing this, and being able to sort of pick up on any minute, details that could potentially pose a problem with the servicer on that application. So this is part of the IDR enrollment. And then going on the next screen, you're going to see what the Public Service Loan Forgiveness and Employment Certification form looks like. This is essentially sort of the same concept. On the left-hand side is the first page that has been pre-filled for the borrower. Again, they need to enter only their social security number and then sign that form. It comes back to us, and then we send it over to their HR employer to be certified. So that HR employer is going to certify that employment period time. We help borrowers, claim certifications for not one employer, not just their current employer, but all the way back to 2007. So we, have put together certification forms, maybe 7, 8, for one borrower who's had different, move from school to school. And that's all part of the essential service. That borrower doesn't need to leave their home. They simply tell us the schools that they worked for, and we do all the rest. We find out the HR contact. I get their information, get them the form. It's all digital. We follow up and make sure that we get their signature and that are able to submit it for you. And truly, that part of the process is what many borrowers, struggle with, because it is such a tedious and cumbersome task. So again, that is all covered by Savvy on the Essential Plan. And then moving forward, this is a look at the dashboard, the user dashboard. And this would be essentially the first thing you would see when you log back into your Savvy account each time. And the purpose of this dashboard is to really help borrowers have visibility into the process around these programs. As I'm sure many of you know, it is not a one and done kind of thing, in 2 days, great, I'm all set. This is going to take, it usually takes a long time. It's a cadence of touch points across months, potentially over years. And so it's really important that we've learned to have sort of, full transparency for the borrower's sake. It can get frustrating when things are taking a long time, right? This is a way for us to all be on the same page, to let you know where you stand in your application. And that way, we can, move forward and help you progress, accordingly. So this is a new feature, actually, and we're really excited about launching it in conjunction with the free service. So we hope, you all take advantage of that. And then I think after this, perfect. So this is our support function. You can access our support team either by clicking that green support button in the right bottom corner of the screen. It's on the bottom corner of every screen in the tool, and that will allow you to send a message to our support team. You can also click that button that says contact an expert, and this will pop up where, again, you'll be able to either start a chat or give us a ring on the telephone, 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. So you have lots of ways to access us. And I think on the last screen here, I'm going to show you one more screen. So essentially what this means for you as a borrower is that no matter where you are in the process of your student loan, repayment, and I say there are varying degrees of this, but we have borrowers who come to us who maybe were in wage garnishment, or default, who might be, just a couple months delinquent, maybe some who haven't even started to make a payment yet or are still in grace periods, maybe some who are already enrolled in an IDR and wondering, well, how can Savvy help me because I'm already, on an IDR. Wherever you are in that sort of spectrum, Savvy is able to help you in some way. And so, if you don't see that help visible through the technology platform itself, so for example, you're in default and you're not able to sync your loans, reach out to us via support, because there is a way for us to help you. It just might not be clearly outlined in the technology of the platform as you see it. So again, any questions or anything, this is why we're here. This is part of this premium service. You can email us, partners+NEA@buysavvy.com, call, and we are standing by, really looking forward to being able to help all of you, go from point A to point B and be successful in this journey. So with that said, I will turn it back over to Eric.
Thank you, Lindsay. And so let me just add a few more things on this. I want to thank her for the presentation and laying out how this tool works. As you can tell from how complicated the student debt system is when we talk about it, and I can tell from all of your hundreds of questions, all of our circumstances get very particularized. And we can provide a general background, but it gets very hard to give you specific advice for your circumstance. And so we at NEA and NEA member benefits have really been looking for ways that we can provide service to our members so that your specific circumstance you can get solved and you can have someone navigating and advocating for you. And so that's what we've been so excited about this Savvy partnership, and why the NEA Members Insurance Trust has decided to put resources into this and to fund this so that it is available to all members free of charge. I'm getting a lot of questions about, what's the charge for the second year? There is right now there's a charge, but we don't know. It's not automatic. You'll just use the first year. Nothing automatic will come out of you. You'll choose if you want additional years. If there's a big demand, maybe we'll examine this and extend years as well. To be clear, last year when this partnership was launched, and the premium service that Lindsay's talking about, where Savvy will run this soup to nuts, was not complimentary completely to all members, but we've decided to do that so that this kind of service is available to everyone. Okay, so let me just sort of frame everything that we're talking about. One is NEA is committed, and we're going to do these, is provide all kinds of background information to help you navigate your own loans. And so you can do that, and that's sort of the first chunk of this. The other thing is we want to provide the ability for you to get very individualized support, and that's what really Savvy can provide. And then the other big picture issue is we need to fix this system for good for all of us. And we're two pieces of action that we really implore you to do, and you should do it right now. Like literally take out your phone, go to edvotes.org/COVID, edvotes.org/loan relief. And there are two big bills that are in Congress. One is the HEROES Act, which provides absolutely necessary funding to state and local budget gaps that will keep our schools resourced just as we're dealing with the pandemic and need more resources to provide safe school and to deal with issues like distance learning. That money is needed just when state budgets are seizing up. And as part of the HEROES Act, it includes extending the relief for student loan borrowers, including extending the suspension of student debt payments, student loan payments. So we need that, and we need to tell Congress to do it. So do that literally right now, edvotes.org/COVID. And then the other thing we need is just broader cancellation. There's currently a bill that NEA supports that includes cancellation of at least $30,000 of student debt. And so you should go to edvotes.org/loan relief and press Congress to do that. And Ronnie has been a real champion on these issues. Is there anything you wanted to add, Ronnie, to the action ask here?
I think the only thing is just that obviously our backbone of our membership, you guys are our voices. So this is so essential in getting to Congress and making sure that your voices are heard, that these things are needed, especially when we look at the next COVID-19 relief packages. I mean, as we look at these suspensions of payments right now is very beneficial, but in the end though, right, that your debt isn't being reduced in that time frame. And it's no different than forgiving and canceling debt than also sending out stimulus checks at the same time. That's kind of our philosophy of looking at it. And that's one way that we could stimulate the economy, of making sure that you guys have the ability to able to make those purchases that Eric had mentioned, whether it's getting a mortgage, a new car, able to move, whatever, maybe have children. There's so many things that you guys could be doing if you guys had that debt forgiven. So this is a very easy way. We map it out in a very easy way for you guys to participate. We do all the terminology of what you'll be saying to Congress. You just need to put your name on it, and it does everything else for you. So highly encourage you guys to visit both of these links.
And then the other big thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we elect leaders who are going to advocate for and actually pass student debt reform, including public service loan forgiveness reform. We have a whole slew of reforms that would make this program much better so that you don't need a law degree to figure out how to get your loans forgiven, and to have broad student debt cancellation. And the choice in this election is super clear. Just the other day, again, Vice President Biden affirmed his commitment to canceling student debt early in his administration, and the Trump administration has proposed ending the public service loan forgiveness program altogether. But it's not just the top of the ticket. We should be looking at candidates up and down in all kinds of races to make sure that they're advocating for student debt reform and student debt cancellation in particular. Okay, we've got just a couple of minutes. I want to get a chance to answer live any questions that have been recurring. I see we have 230 questions that we've answered, 180 that we have not. Sorry if we haven't gotten to yours, but let's see if we can try to collect some of these and see if Christina and Evan have groups of questions that we can answer at one time. Let me go to Christina first.
Hi, Eric. I've got a couple questions on the teacher loan forgiveness that I can take on. Some folks are wondering what it means to be highly qualified for teacher loan forgiveness. And it depends what it is that you're teaching, but to sum it up, you need to be certified to teach in the state that you're teaching in, have a bachelor's degree, and then, for example, if you were a 9th grade English teacher, you have to be qualified to teach English. So that means that you took a state certification or licensing to become qualified to teach English, or you got a like an undergraduate degree where you majored in English, or you got a graduate degree in English. So those are the ways that you can be qualified.
Any other questions, Evan?
Sure. So I've gotten some questions about the public service loan forgiveness program. There's basically getting a lot of questions of kind of, and I'll hope to, again, cover as much as I can. If not, I encourage everyone to please reach out with your questions to Savvy to get these answered. But a lot of questions about, oh, I'm not sure I'm on the right servicer. Wait, I haven't applied yet. Does that mean that I have to make 120 payments now, starting when I apply? The answer is, as long as you met every other requirement, so you were on the right kind of plan, you're working full-time for a public employer, you can go back and make payments count that you've already made if you were on all the right things, right? So the first thing that you'll do is file an employment certification form. We've sent out the link a couple times, but if not, you can Google it. Savvy can help you do it. Employment certification firm, public service loan forgiveness. You'll give that to your employer. They will help you fill it out. And once you submit it to your current servicer, they will look and see if you are on track for public service loan forgiveness. And if so, you will be transferred to Fed loan. So that's why, for some people who are wondering why their current servicer isn't Fed loan yet, it's probably, if you're on track for public service loan forgiveness, that you just haven't submitted an employment certification form. Second question I had a couple of that I did not know the answer to was for members who are already on Savvy and paid for a year this year. Will they be allowed to use a free year for a second year of credit? I just did not know the answer to that and wanted to put that to the group.
Lindsay, do we have an answer for that yet, or are we still looking into that one?
I think we are still sort of trying to determine what the best course of action is going to be. So I don't want to speak too prematurely there, but I would encourage you to reach out to our support team, and we will definitely be figuring that out in the coming days. So we will get back to you on that.
All right, I'll take one last question I see that's coming up, asking about whether these kind of programs apply just for certified staff or non-certified. So to be clear, the teacher loan forgiveness program is only for teachers, but really is only for teachers who teach at low-income school, Title I schools. So it really is low-income school teacher forgiveness. But the public service loan forgiveness applies to anyone who works for a public service employer. What matters isn't the nature of your job, but the nature of your employer. And so it's a much broader program. So for most of our members, the public service loan forgiveness program is going to be where the action's at. A smaller subset, teacher loan forgiveness will be where it's at. Okay, I see we're out of time. I want to thank you all for participating tonight and thank our panelists. Thank Eric, our excellent leader on the NEA Executive Committee. And please reach out to Savvy, call, text and email your member of Congress, check candidates who are going to support student debt cancellation, and thank you, and onward we go. Okay, good night, everybody. Thanks.